It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Russia's retaliation. President Zelensky accuses the Kremlin of targeting civilians following the biggest attack on the city of Kharkiv since the start of the war. Also ahead, why the health department could be one of the few winners in next week's spending review. New figures reveal the scale of foreign aid spending on asylum seekers here in the UK. China sends its vice premier to London for talks aimed at ending Donald Trump's trade war. Plus,
put it on.
Don't feel like you might get off, David.
conservation royalty. Prince William and Sir David Attenborough sound the alarm on the threats facing our oceans. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. At least 4 people have been killed and dozens injured after sustained Russian attacks on the city of Kharkiv. President Zelensky described the onslaught as savage and accused the Kremlin of targeting civilians in what is believed to be the biggest attack of the war so far on Ukraine's second city. Well, meanwhile, a prisoner swap agreed at peace talks on Monday failed to materialize, with Russia blaming Ukraine and Ukraine accusing Russia of playing games. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi reports.
Ukraine's second largest city is in flames, the aftermath of one of the most devastating Russian attacks on Kharkiv since the war began. And it signals a dangerous escalation in this conflict.
There was an explosion and everything started falling off. Nearby, a girl was blocked in the apartment and was calling for help. The fire broke up. We were trying to put it out ourselves with our buckets, together with our neighbours.
We didn't realise it at first. We thought it was a neighbouring building. But when we saw sparks coming from the top, we realised it was ours.
The assaults lasted just 90 minutes, but in that short window, Russia unleashed a relentless barrage of 200 drones and missiles. Residential blocks were hit. Rescue workers sifting through the rubble, searching for survivors and recovering the dead.
It looks like Putin is very emboldened with his relationship, if we can say, with President Trump. You know, the one thing which we know for sure about Putin, he understands only one language of strength. And unfortunately, President Trump chose quite a different type of language to speak with Putin.
The attack comes less than 24 hours after this, one of Moscow's largest aerial offensives, which the Kremlin claims was retaliation for Ukraine's stunning strike on strategic bomber bases deep inside Russian territory last weekend. And the intensifying violence underscores the breakdown of diplomatic efforts. This weekend had been scheduled for a rare prisoner swap, along with the exchange of fallen soldiers, the only point of progress in recent and very brief talks held in Istanbul. Russia says these lorries contain the bodies of Ukrainian servicemen that were supposed to be handed over. But those plans collapsed amid mutual accusations of bad faith.
Unfortunately, the Ukrainian side did not confirm the exchange scheduled for today and postponed it indefinitely. As for the exchange of the prisoners of war, the Ukrainian side has so far refrained from setting a date for the return of these individuals and from the transfer of a corresponding number of captured Russian servicemen.
The prisoner exchange had been seen as a potential foundation for broader peace talks and a first step towards a ceasefire. Instead, both sides appear poised to continue this long and grinding war. Alex Rossi, Sky News.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves will set out her spending priorities on Wednesday, with the health department set to be one of the few winners. The NHS is expected to get a funding boost of up to £30 billion, but it will come at the expense of other public services that are already feeling the squeeze. Our political correspondent Liz Bates reports.
We voted Labour, so why have we still got austerity? That's what these protesters have come to confront the government about.
Money shouldn't be going towards funding wars, to defending us. It needs to go into education. It needs to go into the public sector. That's much more important.
Of course we have to defend ourselves. Of course we have to do that. But we have to do that wisely, and we can't make these cuts on the backs of working people.
But a chance to shift the narrative is coming. With the spending review this week, the Chancellor will set out her priorities for the Parliament.
Save our NHS! Save our NHS!
Health is expected to be top of the agenda. But will more cash make much difference? The NHS is set to receive an extra £30 billion over the next 3 years, a rise of 2.8%, similar to current levels of investment. But much of that extra money will be absorbed by inflation and increasing demand, worsened by an increasingly sick and elderly population.
The NHS is working in crumbling buildings with outdated equipment. So even if you're increasing revenue spending, that's day-to-day spending, unless you invest in things like buildings and equipment, it's going to be tough. The second is in wider services that shape our health, things like social care, public health, education, housing. A long-term strategy for improving health would prioritise those things.
Defence will also get a boost, as global instability and pressure from the US has made it a spending priority. Good news for the Defence Secretary, John Healey, but some of his cabinet colleagues are not as happy.
They've got a lot to say here, but are they listening across the road in number 10, ahead of another defining moment, a spending review, where of course there will be winners, but also losers. With extra investment comes cuts. So once again, this Prime Minister is going to have to make tough choices on public spending, and not everyone agrees with his priorities.
In some ways, it may be worse than the Tory austerity, but it's very important that we call it austerity, because that is what it is, and ordinary people and the public services will suffer.
This is the sound of anger and disappointment. The government response will come on Wednesday, but with limited cash, will it be enough to silence the growing dissent?
And Liz joins me live now from Westminster. So Liz, what more details are you hearing about what will actually be in Wednesday's spending review?
Well, we're getting quite close now to the spending review, a huge defining moment for this government, setting out the spending for this Parliament. And I think we have a pretty good idea now of who the winners and losers are going to be. Certainly health, defence, education, I think will get a big investment from the Treasury. Other departments have been going to the Treasury, going to the Chancellor, making their case, and I think they'll be turning the screws much more over the next couple of days. The problem is there are always winners and there are always losers, and those departments and those secretaries of state that have lost out in the spending review are now facing trying to deliver on the government's priorities, but at the same time trying to cut back on their spending. A very difficult position for them to be in. You know, just to give you a couple of examples, the Home Office has been tasked with one of the government's biggest priorities, stopping the boats. How are they going to do that if they have to do it with less money? When you think about justice, the crisis of overflowing prisons that they're dealing with, again, they are going to potentially have to do that on a smaller budget. So you see the political difficulties that this government will be facing. They will want to trumpet the extra spending in health and on defence and education, but others will be focusing on the areas that are going to suffer. They really have to set out their priorities. It's very politically sensitive. It's a big test for the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, and just a few days until we actually see how they deal with it.
And Liz, earlier tonight, we saw a U-turn from the former Reform UK chairman, Zia Youssef, who has now decided to rejoin the party just 2 days after leaving it.
Yes, an unspoken rule, really, in Westminster, which is if you're going to U-turn, do it quickly. Well, he's certainly stuck by that, because it's about 48 hours ago, just over, that Zia Youssef dropped this bombshell. He's been a huge part of this latest iteration of reform. The chairman, he's invested a lot of money. He's been the person at the centre of organising and professionalising the party. He suddenly came out on X and said he just didn't think it was worth his time anymore to try and get reform into government. It really shocked Westminster. Fast forward 48 hours and he's changed his mind, and he explains it by saying that he was just simply exhausted by working so relentlessly in the job as chairman. Clearly there's been some making up going on behind the scenes. He tweeted, or put a post on X, I should say, saying, over the last 24 hours, I've received a huge number of lovely and heartfelt messages from people who've expressed their dismay at my resignation, urging me to reconsider. So that's obviously part of his thought process. Nigel Farage, the party leader, has also posted on social media saying delighted that Zia Youssef will head up Reform's UK Doge department. He will also assist with policy, fundraising and media appearances. Zia will continue to be an important part of the team. So they've made up. Zia Youssef will now take on a different role. Reform will appoint another chairman. As always, Reform creating drama in Westminster. This time round, it was short-lived.
Liz Bates with the latest from Westminster. Liz, thank you. New figures have revealed the scale of spending from the foreign aid budget being used to house asylum seekers in the UK. £2.2 billion will be spent this year, mostly on accommodation costs. And although the number of asylum seekers in hotels has fallen, it's still over 30,000. Sky's Dan Whitehead reports.
It's a huge expense financially, but just as costly politically. Housing tens of thousands of asylum seekers in hundreds of hotels like this remains controversial. The Home Secretary pushed on the issue just this week.
You have a break clause coming up in these contracts next year. Please tell me you're at least considering breaking those contracts, or at least substantially revising them.
I am concerned about the level of money that's gone into these contracts. Also, look, the scale of the backlog that we inherited. We need to end asylum hotels altogether.
That is Labour's plan, but new figures show little sign of it happening. In fact, the amount of foreign aid diverted to housing UK asylum seekers is barely shifting. At the end of March this year, there were more than 32,000 asylum seekers in UK accommodation. The Home Office says it aims to use just over £2.2 billion of overseas aid this year, the vast majority on asylum hotels. That's only a small drop compared to last year, when it was around £2.3 billion. The Home Office told Sky News it's urgently taking action to reduce costs by speeding up asylum decisions, and says it wants to end the use of hotels by next year.
The government is fighting fire from two sides here. Firstly, public anger from some quarters that hundreds of millions of pounds is being spent on hotels like the one behind me to house asylum seekers. Secondly, the fact that it's taking vital money away from humanitarian aid, much needed overseas.
Foreign aid budgets are already set to fall, with charities saying taking more cash out is a false economy.
Aid can help to support communities to be more resilient to the effects of natural disasters, but they can also help to prevent conflicts from happening in the first place. And when they do happen, help to bring parties together to try and resolve them and rebuild countries after conflict. So really, if we've got less resource to help tackle the root of these challenges, they're going to continue to be a problem for us.
Last Saturday, 1,195 people crossed the channel on small boats, the highest number this year. The government has a legal duty to house them safely. Where the money comes from to pay for it is another matter. Dan Whitehead, Sky News.
At least 15 Palestinians have been killed and 50 wounded in airstrikes on the Gaza City district of Sabra. The target appeared to have been a multi-floor residential building, but witnesses say the explosion damaged several other homes nearby. The Israeli military hasn't commented on the attack, but the IDF has since ordered residents to evacuate areas of the city, as well as the nearby district of Jabalia, ahead of more strikes. Meanwhile, Hamas says the IDF has besieged the area where Israeli hostage Matan Zangaukar is located. A spokesperson for its military wing says the hostage will not be recovered alive and that Israel will be responsible for his death should he be killed in an attempt to free him. And earlier, Israel announced it had retrieved the body of another hostage who was kidnapped and taken to Gaza during the October 7th attacks. Officials say the body of the Thai national Natapong Pinta was discovered in Rafah and returned to Israel in a special military operation. China has confirmed its vice premier will be sent to London next week for the second round of trade talks with the United States. The meeting is part of efforts to de-escalate their trade war and decrease tariffs on goods. Our business and economics correspondent Gurpreet Narwan has been looking ahead to the meeting.
First, a tit-for-tat trade war, the US president pulling back from the brink. Then, an unsteady truce, which now hangs in the air. American and Chinese diplomats have been on a turbulent journey, but they're hoping for a soft landing in London.
Well, we're very far advanced on the China deal. We wanted clarification. We had to have clarification. I talked to President Xi for, I guess, more than 2 hours. We had a very good talk. It's a complicated deal, but it's a deal that's, bring us a lot of money. A discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%.
A conciliatory tone just months after he launched his Liberation Day tariffs. A tit-for-tat escalation with China followed. But both sides have a limited appetite for self-harm. They're meeting in London next week to try and hash out a deal. In many ways, much of this isn't new. Whether we look back to the Biden administration or the first Trump presidency, the US-China relationship has been marked by these regular flare-ups, then periods of calm. The decision to hold the latest round of talks in London, one of the financial centres of the world, will be reassuring to global policymakers and to investors. It points to continuity, that despite the very public and spectacular fallout between the two, both sides still have a keen eye on economic prosperity and stability. That extends to financial stability too. Global stock markets rallied after Donald Trump's election victory, with the S&P 500 in the US peaking just days after he was inaugurated in January. But markets swiftly reversed course, suffering sharp falls as the president's tariffs policy came into force. A week later, the president backtracked with a 90-day pause. Markets have since rebounded. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, will have all of this in mind when he leads the US delegation on Monday. He secured a temporary truce in Geneva last month, but it has been faltering, with both sides accusing the other of violating the terms.
I don't think we're going to see a deal until Trump meets with Xi Jinping in person. The Chinese will have to promise that things like rare earth that the American high-tech industries require will be released and released relatively quickly.
So London could be an important pit stop, but it's unlikely to be the final destination on the journey to normalising relations between the world's two largest economies. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News.
A Sky News investigation has found that 70% of strangulation cases have been dropped by police in the last year, with campaigners alleging that vital evidence is being missed. It's now 3 years since non-fatal strangulation became a specific offence in England and Wales. But domestic abuse victims who've been strangled or suffocated say they're being failed by the justice system. A warning that this report from Ashna Hurinag contains descriptions of domestic abuse, which you may find distressing.
Sarah, not her real name, knows what it's like to have someone restrict the air you breathe. She was abused by her former partner, who for years would regularly do the unthinkable.
I remember the first time it happened. He was drunk and he climbed on top of me. He put his hands around my throat and he pinned me down with the strength of his body. I had tears rolling down my face. I remember saying numerous times, "No, stop." And he just continued.
This was something that he began to do quite a bit in the end.
He'd done it all the way through our 7-year relationship. Even when I was pregnant with our child, he did that. I actually miscarried one of my children because of the abuse.
Sarah eventually reported the abuse to police, but a lack of evidence meant he was never charged.
Looking back now, I can see it was a form of control that he got off on, knowing that he was in control, and even though I was saying no, he continued to do that, and he liked seeing me upset, and it didn't even matter if the children were in the same house or room. I feel angry that he'd done that to me. I don't actually know how somebody could do that, those things to another human being. It's inhumane.
Non-fatal strangulation only became a standalone offence 3 years ago today. Since then, Sky News can reveal there have been almost 40,000 investigations recorded in the past year, but 70% of cases are being dropped due to evidential difficulties. That's despite 1 in 5 victims wanting to pursue the case. The leading charity for addressing strangulation says vital evidence is being missed.
In around 50% of cases, there are no external physical visible signs of injury. That's not to say that there aren't internal injuries. Seeing individuals as possibly disoriented, not knowing or remembering what has happened because their brain has been deprived of oxygen and they're not able to form memories, all of these specific nuances that come with strangulation, of course, then sit within a broader context of domestic abuse.
Many domestic abuse survivors choose not to pursue further action. But for those wanting to see a conviction, it's a long journey that victims need better support with.
We're seeing a significant increase in successful prosecutions for rape, and we're looking at how that's expanded across all aspects of violence against women and girls. And there's huge potential in this work, but we know that perpetrators are rarely committing a one-off offence, and therefore if we can really get to the focus on perpetrators who are causing so much harm, one, we might deter others, but two, we'll protect more victims.
The Crown Prosecution Service says charges of strangulation are often brought alongside more serious offences, such as rape. Their message is that this violent act, used to exert power over another person, will be punished. Ashna Harinag, Sky News.
The Prince of Wales has teamed up with Sir David Attenborough to sound the alarm on the threats facing our oceans. Prince William will be speaking in Monaco tomorrow, where he'll call on world leaders to take urgent action to save the world's seas. And ahead of that speech, he's been speaking to Sir David about his latest project. Our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills reports.
When you put it on...
You won't get it off, David.
But and suddenly it's a strange thing to do.
You can tell they've known each other for a while. Sir David Attenborough, for decades, has been a family friend and a true inspiration for Prince William. Now teaming up to draw attention to the damage being done to our oceans.
David, from what you've obviously seen over the years, what state would you say the oceans are in right now?
The awful thing is that it's hidden from you and from me and from most people. The thing which I am appalled by when I first saw the shots that were taken for this film are what we have done to the deep ocean floor is just unspeakably awful. I mean, if you did anything remotely like it on land, everybody would be up in arms. If this film does anything, if it just shifts public awareness, it'll be very, very important. And I can only hope that people who see it will recognise that something must be done before we destroy this great treasure.
It comes as William prepares to head to the south of France to deliver a speech at the Blue Economy and Finance Forum, in which he's expected to say, halfway through this decisive decade, I call on all of you to think big in your actions. Let us act together with urgency and optimism while we still have the chance.
Royal salute!
Deliberately strong words, we're told, from a man who is increasingly being built up as a global statesman.
Doing a fantastic job. Thank you.
Trying to show a more empathetic style of leadership than others, diplomatically important for the UK, but also for the social issues that matter to him. He'll be hoping his trip to Monaco will be another big opportunity to really promote his Earthshot Environmental Prize.
What gives you hope? What inspires you? Have you seen any stories where you feel that there is hope that we can turn this around?
What is heartening, really, is that we have the entree to people's front rooms.
Yeah.
Whole families sitting at home in comfort can actually suddenly see this coming up. Films like this can expose something new.
All of it along with his supporters about delivering a hopeful message, but increasingly demanding action now. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
It's been a busy day of sport. Let's get all the latest with David.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
How do you manage to keep your spirits up and the spirits of your teammates after challenges you may face?
Self-confidence in yourself and your own ability is such an important aspect to have.
I've had a number of injuries the last year and a half or 2 years, and they've taken their toll on my head at times.
Sometimes you just need to grab somebody and just give them a hug, tell them that it'll be okay.
Professional footballers helping young people with their mental health. That's the aim of virtual soccer schools, alongside learning platform Amazing People Schools. Online, in person, and with AI technology.
My question is, how do you deal with stress on and off the pitch?
Football is the most powerful sport in the world. And utilising footballers, we just see them as players on the pitch, passing the ball and scoring goals, but they have so much more to offer. So at VSS, we're providing them with a platform to showcase their mental health strategies, their setbacks, how they deal with anxiety, pressure, and growth mindset, just not on the pitch, but how they utilise it off the pitch as well.
Former Arsenal defender Thomas Vermaelen was the latest footballer to take part in the charity's first ever in-person session.
Allow yourself to be disappointed.
I enjoy passing on experiences, if it's about mental health, my career, the pressure I've been through, giving my experience to the younger generation is something that I really like. In earlier years, we didn't really speak about it, so it's just we get along and we go through tough times, but you hear now players basically after their career opening up about the struggles they had during. As ex-professionals, if we can give some sort of experience of insight, what to expect, or any advice we can give to the younger generation, I think it's only good. We can prepare them a little bit.
That sentiment was shared by Chelsea midfielder Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall.
It is important in this day and age to talk about it because there's a lot of people that go through it. As a youngster, I probably let things affect me a little bit more, and I was a bit more naive to it. But the older you get, the more experience you get, I think you just learn to not let it get you down. If you see negative comments or whatever, just don't let it get you down. Look, just see the positive ones and how you can use that in a good way. As I've gone along in my career, I've learned to deal with that in a better way.
Pressure is in the moment can be very uncomfortable. At the same time, it's also something what gives excitement to the career and the games. But yeah, if you really struggle with the pressure and you see it's affecting your performances, I wish then in those days you could speak about it more, but I think in those days it was more like a sign of weakness sometimes.
It's that perception of weakness around mental health that the charity wants to break down amongst the young.
It's amazing to see the young people come on to our sessions, have that confidence to ask the player a question on real tough subject matters such as social media, resilience, growth mindset, bullying, and how those players have dealt with it within their own world and giving back to the next generation.
Hi there, my name is Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. I'm here today to talk about stress, anxiety, mental health.
And VSS is taking it one step further with the introduction of AI and on-demand help as part of the service they provide.
We will essentially make it so that people can go online, ask you a question, and then your answer will play.
Having Kiernan taking part in this AI mental health initiative is a game changer, because what we're about to do is we're about to give children the mental health support they deserve by having it on demand. So we have the virtual VSS via Zoom, we have the in-person session, and now we have the AI as well.
As a youngster, making my first appearances in a senior environment, I would get very nervous going into matches.
I haven't got an exact science on how to deal with stuff, but I am learning. I'm a human being that deals with things, and I'm not saying I'm happy all the time. I obviously have moments where I'm a bit more down, but it's just trying to recognise in the time what certain things can help me in the moment. And if I had it when I was a youngster, I think it would have helped me a lot. So if I can help in any way, then great, because the next generation is coming through, and it's an exciting time for them.
I think it's important to talk about mental health. I learned loads of stuff.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
And that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. And tonight, we're joined by the PR consultant, Kevin McKeever, and later, we hope, by former Conservative Special Advisor, Anita Boateng. Well, among the stories we'll be discussing this on the front of the Sunday Telegraph. Their headline, quoting Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, let bosses ban burqas in offices. We'll be right back.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.